So, welcome to Popular Pulmonary Wellness and our chat and chew today on traveling with oxygen. We provide programming to help you all get out there and live your best on life. In today's chat and chew, we usually like to just um, start with a land acknowledgement. So, we'd like to acknowledge the land on which we work, live, and play. For us, so for Tina and I in Vancouver, that's the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. And so in the chat box, if you like, feel free to write the lands on which you are on today. And so we are thankful to be able to learn on these lands today. For our Poplar Chat and Chew, we like to create a safe space. So this is a small group discussion about traveling with oxygen today. We come with open hearts and minds, and everyone's free to share their thoughts, their experiences, their values, and especially to ask their questions without fear or judgment, which is really a hard thing to do sometimes to be brave enough to ask your question, but we really want you to. So we thank everyone for creating this safe space with us today. Normally we make a joke about Vegas rules that what stays here, what stays in the Poplar space, this chat and chew space, but we're recording today. All right. Oops, there we go. So in our chat and chews, those that have attended with us before, sometimes we get off topic a little bit, and that's okay. But we do want to make sure that everyone gets their questions answered. So if we're off topic for a little too long, the moderators will nudge the conversation back to our topic, which is traveling with oxygen. At the end of our time together, we'll formally end the chat and chew, but we will stay on and we will stay on for about 5 minutes or so, and those that have any little extra questions that need to get addressed, we can do that, and then we'll close the Zoom. We have just a couple brief announcements. So tomorrow we do have our BC Better Breathers Club. We're going to be talking about wildfire smoke and how to prepare. We've got two options. You can join us online, similar to this, or you can join us in person in Vancouver at the BC Lung Foundation. And those in person will be making air filters, portable air filters. So there's more information on our website. We do have chat and chews occurring every month, so feel free to check the event section in the Poplar community. We have our May Fitness Club promotion on right now, so you could try unlimited fitness classes here at Poplar for $37.50 for your first month, and those are for new members. So do check our blog, YouTube channel, or website for more information. So let's get comfy and cozy. Perhaps you have a hot drink and a nice blanket. And I am going to introduce Laura, and I'm going to stop the screen share there. And Laura Hulstein is with us today. She's a respiratory therapist. She's gearing up to write her certified respiratory educator exam. And she comes to us with experience with home oxygen. So welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Really nice to see you all. So like Jenna said, I'm a respiratory therapist as well. A bit of background, I worked at Royal Columbian for about 15 years, doing kind of critical care work. And I really kind of started feeling burnt out after COVID and after so many years of doing shift work. And I was kind of wanting to kind of just was more focused on my own health and wellness and kind of getting to the root cause of some of these imbalances. And I started taking a health coaching course because I was just so interested in that kind of more the kind of the ground up approach more and more holistic approach. So I started my health coaching, and then that kind of halfway through kind of led me to actually leave the hospital and start working in the community. So that was just over a year ago now that I've been working, doing home visits around home oxygen. So I am fairly new, but I've been learning a lot. There's a lot to learn, and I've been really enjoying doing the home visits and getting to spend more time with people and kind of doing some more education and just trying to help people out where they're at and in their own homes. So yeah, I'm a little bit new. I know when I first started, I got a lot of questions about traveling with oxygen. That was kind of a hot topic, and it's not something we were necessarily really taught about in school. It's kind of something we've had to learn on the job. So I've been kind of getting most of my knowledge from my clients that I see and kind of learning through their experiences. And then when I was talking to Tina and Jenna, they did express that they wanted somebody to do kind of a write-up for them about home oxygen and everything that entails, all of the equipment, how do you qualify, kind of pros and cons of the equipment, and then also more to do with traveling in oxygen. So I have been working on that, again, kind of learning from my clients and then also doing some of my own research. But I know, like I said, I'm not an expert in this field. I know maybe some of you do have some experience with that. So, yeah, I'd like to open it up if anyone wants to share about their own experiences, potentially with traveling with oxygen or questions you have, and maybe let us know where you've traveled to with oxygen or where you would like to.
Sounds good. We could maybe go around the room, and if people wanted to introduce themselves and maybe let us know what your experiences and or questions are about traveling with oxygen. On my screen here, the first person I've got up is Jeannie. Jeannie, did you want to share any experiences or
Sure.
introduce yourself? And
My name is Jeannie, and I'm from Toronto. I've been on liquid oxygen since 2011. I've traveled to Newfoundland several times, no, once actually, with the sequel Eclipse. It was in the wintertime, so I didn't find that the sequel Eclipse was really convenient. It was heavy, and I had to rely on friends to lift it in and out of the car and up and down hilly driveways. But one funny thing happened during that Christmas. I was out to a party with some friends, and they were seated like across from me, but they were backed up. Their back was to the window, and they said, "Oh, seems like the snow plow was coming down the road." So, well, okay, it's snowing out, and so then a little while later they goes, "Well, we don't see the snow plow," and so we continued our conversation, and then the host came around behind where I was seated to adjust the stereo. She goes, "Oh, the sound is coming from Jeannie's machine." And then for the rest of the holidays, that story kind of circulated the little town that I was in. So I think everybody knew about that concentrated
Yeah.
experience.
I thought it was
And I didn't think it was that
example.
loud, but I guess I've got used to it. But
Cute.
I guess the one drawback that I found was that, like, I had extra batteries because I'm supposed to have 1.5 times the battery for the travel time, including layovers and that. Um, I found that I used the battery in the airport, like going like right from the entrance to the gate, and then I also used it. I used it on board, and I found out that I ran out on the tail end of my trip, so maybe the last half hour or so. So instead of having it on full flow, I put it on half flow to try to stretch it. But it was kind of a challenge because the oxygen ran out.
You need to ask
Yeah.
what flow rate did you have it set to?
I'm on the flow rate of 4. 4 liters a minute.
And the Eclipse, that's quite a large one, right?
Yeah, it weighs about, I'd say 25 to 30 pounds. It's like a heavy suitcase to drag around type thing. But the flow of 4 is not equivalent to the 4 liters on liquid. So I kind of had to up it to 5 or 6 when I really needed it. And that's what I find with the pulse mode and the continuous mode, because generally with the liquid oxygen I'm on continuous flow, so it just is constantly coming. But with the pulse flow, it's quite dependent on nasal breathing, which is not a problem for me, but it detects when you're ready to take a breath, and it gives you a little puff of oxygen. So I found, like, other times when I traveled with it, another time in Montreal, I found the flow of 4 wasn't enough, and I had to turn it up to 6. But I tried to simply go and the Inogen, and I found the Inogen just what really, it didn't have enough power for what I needed or enough supply. I like to simply go, but I didn't really, like, the Inogen was small and convenient that way, but it didn't really provide the supply that I needed.
Right. Thank you. That's some really great points that you talked about there. One is that, yeah, the size and the weight is really going to depend on like the battery and how much flow it's capable of giving. And for flying, you use the portable oxygen concentrator, and that really only works generally in that pulse mode. So that's something to be aware of too. If you're used to the continuous flow of say 2 liters, you're likely going to have to bump that up by a couple, and that might kind of limit you in what device you can bring. You might need to go to a bigger device just to be able to give you enough oxygen. And then, yeah, the battery length is another thing where
I guess like in the airport, you could, like, when I'm seated somewhere to rest, I could plug it into an outlet, but then you're restricted to the 7 feet of tubing. You can't go anywhere. You kind of have to stay there with your machine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And then also because in the airplane, you're at a higher elevation. And so in the plane, it's pressurized, but there's just less oxygen available. So for that reason, you also might need to have a bit more. So definitely we say kind of talk to your doctor like before you go on your trip to really determine, okay, how much am I going to need when I'm in the plane? And what device is going to be able to deliver enough oxygen for me.
There's also the high altitude simulation test, the HAST, for if one wanted to know the flow that they needed or the amount of oxygen that they need. It's kind of a simulated test. I've never taken it. I just have heard about it.
Yeah, and that's something your doctor might tell you as well, that they recommend for that testing, because say you're kind of okay at baseline, like you don't need oxygen all the time at rest, but your doctor might just want to see that when you're on the airplane and it's like you're at a very high elevation and the oxygen in the air is less because you're so high up, do you then require oxygen? So if your saturation, if you drop to 85% during that testing, then they'll start titrating in some oxygen, and they'll kind of make a prescription for what you would require when you're in the plane.
What is that test called?
Comment about suppliers.
I'll type it in the test.
It has a few different names. One is like high altitude testing, or travel oximetry is what I've also heard it called. I know Royal Columbian does it, and I think Jim Pattison, but it won't be available everywhere. It's kind of one of those specialty tests. So you would definitely need to see your doctor and see if they recommend that for you.
So if your lung capacity is too low, do some people can't fly at all? Like, do doctors say no?
It might not be that you can't fly, but it might be that that test would show that when on the plane, you do require oxygen.
You can buy oxygen on the plane, but it's very expensive. And also, not every province across Canada has access, well, like to liquid oxygen. I guess the portable oxygen is okay, but the liquid oxygen is not available everywhere.
You can have the portable one plugged in plane, the portable one on the plane.
The portables on the plane would be your airline approved POC. It's on pulse mode. It's not liquid. We can't bring liquid on board.
Can you plug it in? Can you plug it in on the plane?
The
One of
liquid?
those? No, just the Inogen. Can you plug it in on the plane?
Oh,
Is there a plug-in for it?
That's a great question.
Maybe. I don't fully remember. I took it on a bus trip to Montreal.
That's where it would be good to connect with your airline and exactly which plane you're on, because some of them will have a 3-prong plug-in, but many of them now just have like USB or something, like a different kind of connector. So you'd want to know like exactly what plane you're on for your trip, I'd say.
Yeah. I was supposed to go to Scotland this coming September for my niece's wedding, but I just figured it's a long, long flight, and I didn't know how it would be too complicated and too much to try and go there with oxygen.
Are you on oxygen? Like, when do you need it?
I don't need it sleeping or sitting, but if I'm up walking around after a couple of minutes, or if I'm bending over, exerting myself or anything, I need it. And I'm at 3.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be worth looking into if it's still a possibility for you, for sure. You might want to touch base with your doctor first and like potentially do that altitude testing. And then it might show that you just need maybe a little bit even at rest. And it's really the portable, like Jeannie was saying, the portable oxygen concentrator. They won't really allow you to bring on cylinders or anything else. It's those POCs with the pulse mode. And
they have to be airline approved. I don't know if they are all airline approved or not.
I think mostly they are nowadays. They should be fine for the airline, but there is a list that you can look up that will show you exactly all the models and ones that are airline approved. And you can always rent.
Can you just rent those portable ones? I just have like the bottles of CO2 tanks, but you could rent the portable ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could ask your oxygen provider. They may need 6 weeks to line up the equipment for you, but my company here in Toronto usually wants a 6-week notice, and then the RT would come out and assess me at home, walking around the house as well. And I sometimes get a choice of, which machine I want.
Do you know how many hours these portable ones, the battery lasts for?
It depends on your flow as well.
Yeah, I figured that like a 3, and it's only pulse. I understand they're not continuous.
Not going to last super long, but you're right. It really depends on the model and what flow rate you have it at. It might be possible you might need like 2 batteries. It might be possible to bring on an extra one. And like Jeannie said too, they want you to have 1.5 times battery length for the length of your flight, because they want to account for any layovers. So you kind of need to determine that kind of ahead of time. And it would be great if you could just plug it into the plane and you wouldn't have to worry about it so much, but it's not something you could count on. Like Jenna was saying, I think you really need to touch base with the airline to see what they allow. I think it's partly to do with just safety and the battery itself as well. So airplanes are all about safety. They might not allow you to keep it charging. So That's something you would have to first just talk with your doctor, kind of determine what's my prescription that I'm going to need. And then after that, kind of go to look to what device will be able to provide that level of flow for you. And then look into the battery as well, in making sure you have enough battery to last the length. Especially if it's a very long flight, that would be potentially a bit challenging.
Yeah, I won't be going to Scotland. I decided no. But my daughters, they like, we wouldn't mind going to like Vegas or something, right? So Vegas is a lot shorter of a flight. But I was wondering for just walking around, how long the battery would last if we're
It's usually for a few hours. It's usually, Barb,
hours.
you know how much they last. Barb would know how long. I've got one, I can't remember. The portable ones. Barb usually knows that. What I was going to say to you, I'm on exertion too for my oxygen. And I thought flying from here to Prince George, I took that test. They said I was fine for flying. Good. But I only had the cylinders like yourself at the time. So when I couldn't bring that on there. And at the time I couldn't rent a portable. They were just, nobody had any at the time when I was going. So I rigged it up that I took my oxygen, unhooked my regulator, and left it in the vehicle, and was wheeled right to the door of the plane, got on, flew to Prince George, and I had oxygen waiting for me there. So I was fine. Mm-hmm. But I came back on Air Canada. I went to WestJet, coming back on Air Canada. He said, only because you're going a short distance, the plane doesn't go high enough. He says, when you go higher than 35,000, which you would for other areas, longer distance, the oxygen gets very low when you're up in the air for everybody, the cabin. So really be aware of that, just with, because I thought, okay, I'm just exertion. I'm good. I'm just sitting the whole time. Well, the oxygen does drop, and you possibly could need it. Mm-hmm. Just a heads up on that one.
Yeah. And that's what the test will help them decide.
Right.
Yeah. It's a hypoxic test.
With you.
Pardon?
You could always carry a pulse oximeter with you.
Yeah.
The one that you put on your finger.
Mm-hmm.
I usually have it in my pocket, but
yeah.
Yeah. You need to know before you get on the plane, though.
Yeah, it might be a good thing to have that with you, so you can titrate it to ideally kind of make your battery last a bit longer as well.
I just would like to say that I have traveled with oxygen, many modes of transportation. So it is doable. It's doable for everybody as long as you pre-plan what you're going to do. It can be a little bit stressful, but as long as you just go one foot in front of the other, work with your provider, they will give you some really good guidance, but you have to be patient. You have to be really patient. To start with, we used to have a truck and camper, and I would take my concentrator and buckle it on the back seat, and then we chose a campground that we could plug the concentrator into. So that worked for those times. Then traveling around BC and Alberta in the last few years, you can't take liquid oxygen and travel down the road with it. They won't allow you. So I had to go to cylinders. So again, if you work with your provider, you can switch over to cylinders. They used to give you a listing of where all the depots were in BC and Alberta. That's what I asked for. They no longer give you the complete listing of where the depots are, but they will give you a listing of the depots if you tell them the route that you're going to travel. So then what you have to do is not say, oh, I'm going to drive tonight and I'll stop in Revelstoke, because there's no depot in Revelstoke. You're going to have to stay in Golden. So you plan your overnight accommodations as to where the depots are. Then you would travel with that oxygen, sleep with whatever device you're able to. In the morning, before you leave town, you drive to where the depot is, drop off the empties, and they give you full ones, and then you carry on. And that's how the last 2 summers, I had to go back for funerals. And that's how I traveled that way. I flew to New York, and I did use the sequel because it is both pulse and continuous. And I had it in a trolley. And as you've said already, you need a minimum 1.5 times your battery life for it. So I would encourage people that if you enjoy to travel or you need to travel, it is doable, but you have to do your planning.
Right. I think that's some
Another thing is, you can always ask for a wheelchair assistance, so that the airport staff could take you from the entrance to the gate, and it would save your energy with walking to the airports. You know, some airports obviously are larger than others, but yeah, I found that helpful.
When I flew, I was flying with 5 other ladies, and they wanted me to be their travel companion because they got to go to the first of the line and
All the perks.
like, okay, you're coming along. It does have its challenge, and as Laura was saying, if you're traveling by air, when you're booking your flight, you need to speak with your travel agent and let the airline know that you're coming with oxygen. You can't just show up with oxygen. They will not like you. You know ahead of time that you're coming with oxygen, and that
there are forms that you need to fill out as well.
Yeah, you need to have a pre-approved POC with you in order to do that.
You were saying you can't drive with oxygen bottles, like the portable tanks?
Oh, yes, but not liquid oxygen for a long length of time.
Liquid oxygen, that's like with the ones with the regulator you put on, right on the tank?
That you can travel within your vehicle, but like now I'm on liquid oxygen, so I have a big machine in my garage. And if I want to go out, I have to fill up, they call it a stroller. I have to fill up a stroller every time I'm going to go somewhere. It's not safe to travel with that great big liter. I think it's got 48 liters of liquid oxygen.
There are some smaller ones.
That's allowed in your car, right?
Yes, that cylinder is allowed in your car.
Yeah. You can travel with the cylinders. Yeah. I'm confused.
That's okay. Yeah, all the equipment names are confusing for sure.
I've traveled to Brandon and Kelowna, and I even drove to Alberta with all these bottles in my car.
Yeah.
No, that's
the cylinders are good.
Our travel, just that wouldn't be allowed onto an airplane.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can just do a little quick. So those cylinders that you have is all gas inside. It's just oxygen gas. And then the one that Barb is talking about, it's actually a liquid in there, and it has to be cooled. Oxygen has to be cold to stay in liquid form. And so as it warms up to room temperature, it turns into a gas, and it actually has to be pressure released from those liquid tanks. So the liquid tanks only last a certain amount of time, even if you don't use the oxygen, it just kind of dissipates.
Yeah, they evaporate.
They evaporate. Yeah. So, and there's more risks in carrying like a liquid cooled container. Yeah. And those things are big, Barb. Getting that into the car.
Can I ask about cruise ships? Has anyone been on a cruise? Can you take those kind of bottles I have on a cruise, or do they have to be the portable machines on a cruise ship?
I've not been on a cruise ship, but my friend went, and she just worked with her provider. And when she used her portable concentrator to get onto the cruise ship, and when she was on board, there was a concentrator in her room for her.
Who put it in there? Who arranged for it? The air, like Vital Air or somebody, or
whoever your provider is.
Okay.
Yeah, you'd work with your provider, and yeah, they don't want you to stay at home. They want you to travel and enjoy life, so they will work with you. And yeah, she's gone on many cruises, and she just uses her POC and gets on board and then the concentrator's in her room.
What's the POC that she uses to get on board? It's like the tanks with the air in them, not the liquid?
The portable concentrator.
Oh, okay, like the battery. Okay.
Or you can plug them in to charge as well.
Okay.
Yeah, cruise is an easier option, I would think, and they should allow the big concentrator, portable, maybe not the liquid, but tanks like what you have or the POC should be fine on the cruise. Just like with airlines, you'd want to look up the specific cruise line to see what their rules and regulations are. They'll also want to see a form signed by your doctor, probably, and a prescription for your oxygen, most likely. So you want to have that on hand. And then, yeah, you can work with your oxygen provider, or there's other kind of independent companies. I talked with one lady and she uses, it's called Scoot Around, and they're a company that will work with you and deliver whatever oxygen you need to like the cruise ship port or different spots along the way. So if your specific provider doesn't work, there are like third parties that you could work with that really set up to do this kind of thing. Another point I heard about cruises is just to think about how you're going to have it plugged in. Say you have a big concentrator because you need oxygen at night. You might need want to bring an extra extension cord. Maybe you might need a power converter and also maybe a plug adapter, because it might be like European plugs that wouldn't be compatible with the plug on your machine. So just to have all of that kind of with you and ready to go, so you can make sure it can be plugged in.
The Canadian Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation has a whole section on their website about oxygen, traveling with oxygen. So yeah, that might be a resource that you could look into.
Yes, I think I looked at that.
Absolutely. And to complement that, we will be linking to it in the Poplar community, but Laura's also put together all of this information that we will be making available to you in the Poplar community. So on the left navigation side of your screen, by tomorrow, you should see an oxygen tab that will have this information as well. And we'll be sure to put pictures, because certainly we're hearing from this conversation, it's hard to know the names of all these different devices and what they look like. And as we've been discussing, there's lots of rules. So we'll be sure to get some good pictures up there for you so you can kind of make sense of it all.
Something that Laura touched on as well was a prescription. And it was somebody at the Ridge Meadows Hospital that advised that when you're traveling with oxygen, particularly if you're leaving the country, that you should have a prescription, because oxygen is a drug. Ooh. And when you get to the border, say you want to go to Bellingham, get some cheap gas, whatever, yeah, they could ask to see a prescription at the border. So I carry one in my purse all the time.
Great.
Okay, good info.
Yeah, whenever you're traveling, it's a good idea to keep those important documents with you. Same with at the airline. When you go to check in, they're probably going to want to see that you have those documents all in place. And then like Jeannie was saying, because you've already contacted them, you should be like a priority boarding. So try to get there early to the airport, because you're going to have to maybe talk to some people along the way. And then if you want to get there and kind of seated and everything, and then plug in your device so that it's fully charged right before getting onto your boarding. So giving yourself lots of time. Like Barbara was saying, you don't want this to be a really stressful thing. And if you're renting equipment, they need several weeks. I think from Vital Air, they were saying at least 3 weeks notice to be able to get the specific device you need. So it's not something you'd want to leave to a couple weeks before. Definitely give yourself the time to prepare, to not have that stress, be able to enjoy your time as much as you can. Yeah, just kind of like have everything organized.
If you know the places that you're going to be staying, you could ask your oxygen provider if they could provide a concentrator at that destination. And then you could use it there. They would generally bring it there and pick it up, whenever you're leaving. I've done that with conferences, either here in Toronto or elsewhere. So I could have like an extra concentrator beside my own portable when I'm traveling.
Mm.
It's a great tip, Jeannie.
Yeah. So
Oh yes, and Barbara was saying about the challenges of traveling with a 40-liter Liberator. They come in smaller sizes, 20. I think mine is 37 at home, but I have had ones that were 20 liters when I've been in hotels.
yeah, that's potentially a really good option, is just to call ahead and have that organized, to have that big concentrator delivered for you. So, it depends what you're actually able to do. So when you're like traveling by car, really just determining, okay, what kind of machines do I need with me? Is it just the portable machine or tanks that I can carry in my car? Or do I also need a concentrator, one of those big standing ones? And that might not be so portable for you to be driving all over. It might not be safe to keep in your car, so that would be a great option, is just to bring your portable, your POC, say, with you, or your tank, and then that you can keep charging in your car as you're driving. You just need the converter there to work in your car, and then have it prearranged to have the concentrator waiting for you to at your specific destination.
If I was driving to say if I wanted to drive to Las Vegas, does Vital Air have places where I can drop off empty tanks and get new tanks on the way from here to Las Vegas?
You need to ask them that yourself.
Okay.
That's a great question. I actually was hoping to have someone from Vital Air on the talk with us to answer these specific questions, but I guess we won't make it today. But I can definitely ask him about that. What happens with international travel with the tanks? I don't know.
You could also ask your oxygen provider for like names of contacts along your route, similar to what Barbara was saying earlier.
Yeah.
So in case you have a problem, if the battery, doesn't work, or the gauge doesn't work, then at least you have somebody to contact.
Yeah, exactly.
So Barb, when you went to New York, did you, what happened with your oxygen there? Were you in contact with an air provider? Or you just brought your own and that was it? You didn't have to get in touch with them?
The Sequel Eclipse, pardon me, is pulse or continuous, and it's portable, and it would meet my needs because it goes up to, I think, 12.
Yeah.
It goes up to a flow leader of 12. So I could use it while I was sleeping and put it on continuous. And when I didn't need it on continuous, then I would just put it on pulse. And it was not provided for me. It was one that I purchased.
Okay.
Yeah, we purchased.
Yeah, with this traveling, I'm going, wow, if I go to Mexico or Hawaii, would they have a concentrator there waiting for me? But we don't know about international.
Well, you'd have to call ahead and maybe contact an organization. I don't know if Vital Air is able to do that for you. They can rent you machines, but to have it like waiting for you, you might need an outside.
It's not in the cards right now, but boy, did it ever flash through my head.
Yeah, it's great to start thinking about. Like it's possible. It just takes extra planning, right?
Yeah, like Barb was saying.
I think depending on how far along you are with your lung disease, you need to take a look at how many more travel years do I have? Because you can rent this equipment from your provider, Vital Air or MedPro, but it gets to be extremely expensive. So, excuse me, if you think you're going to take 2 trips a year for the next 5 years, financially, you might just be better off to purchase your own. And if you're still working, perhaps your extended benefits would pay for a portion of it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I
You
don't worry.
actually have to pay to rent those machines. Whenever I've gotten them, they were always free.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was gonna ask about each of your experiences with funding or having to pay. So, Jeannie, your stuff has always been covered.
Yeah, well, I say it's free, but it's covered by, our health care.
Yeah. And was that only travel within Canada or have you left the country?
I've only gone to Newfoundland once with oxygen.
Okay.
And I haven't gone anywhere since, like not by airline. I've taken bus trips to Montreal and Ottawa. So yeah.
Okay. And Barb?
When I traveled to New York, I used strictly the unit that I had purchased, so there was no cost. But when I traveled to Alberta this last time, it gets a little complicated for people that are new to oxygen, but your provider will only allow you to have 2 devices. So for me, I had the liquid oxygen that I couldn't take, plus I have a small little portable one that I plug into my car. So for them to give me cylinders, that's the one with the regulator, Allison, I had to pay for that because they've already given me 2 types of oxygen in my home. And it would have meant them coming and taking the liquid oxygen away and giving me all new cylinders, because you can't have 3 sources of oxygen paid for. You're only funded for so much. So I had to rent those bottles, and it wasn't cheap. No, it wasn't cheap.
Wow.
Yeah, that's at least in BC, that's how the program works. They'll only give you one type of oxygen that's portable. So either the tanks or the POC. We actually are phasing out liquid oxygen altogether in BC. And then if you also need, say, nocturnal oxygen, you'll have the concentrator as well, but they won't just kind of give you the POC if you have the tanks. I have had clients where I've seen them and they have the tanks with the regulator and they're going on a trip, and then they'll be asking, oh, can I switch to the POC because I'm going on a trip? So it might be possible to switch, but then maybe you just want it for the trip. So maybe it's better just to rent it. But some people, that's kind of what pushes them to make a switch to the portable oxygen concentrator if it works for them. But yeah, otherwise, unfortunately, it would be a matter of renting that equipment for the trip, or private purchase is maybe a good option as well if you're able to do that.
Yeah, or they have to switch back and forth, I guess.
Yeah, and that all takes time as well, and it really depends on what's available. So yeah, it's not something you want to leave to the last minute, like, oh, can you switch me to the POC? I have a cruise in 2 weeks, or I have a flight. And then I would say I can request it, but I can't guarantee this. Sometimes there's a big wait list for these POCs, and I can't guarantee you're going to have it in time, which can be pretty stressful. So in that situation, if it's really close to when you're going, I would say you'd be better off calling and asking to rent for the trip.
And then along the lines of what Barb was saying about whether purchasing your own or these other routes, she had also shared with us in the past about that you can claim your purchase of an oxygen concentrator on your taxes. So I put the link in the chat box. You can also claim the electricity that you use to power your oxygen concentrator on your taxes.
I purchased an extra regulator because I found it kind of a pain to, every time I wanted to go out, switching the regulator from the big tank to the small one that goes in my backpack when I want to go walk my dog. So it was a pain taking the regulator on and off each tank all the time. And it was $500 for another regulator. So, but it makes my life so much easier now. Like if my cat gets out of the house and I got to go out quick, grab my backpack, it's on my back and I'm gone. I don't have to switch the regulator from the big tank and put it on the little one. But yeah, and it's also hard, I find, trying to figure out, I'm only allowed to have, I think, 16 bottles. So it's kind of hard to balance out, do I want 4 large ones and then, 12 small ones? If I'm exercising more, then I'll need more large ones than smaller ones if I don't get out much. Because I only use the small ones when I go out, and the large ones around the house for exercise and stuff. But it's just really hard to trying to find the right balance, and sometimes I run out. I'm on my last bottle when it's delivery day, and I'm stressing out and freaking out whether I'm in a last enough. So I find they don't give you enough, really. And I'm with Green Shield. So your question was if we have to pay for our oxygen. I'm with Green Shield through my work, and I was told that Green Shield doesn't cover oxygen, so the government's paying, I guess, for mine.
Are you using pulse mode or continuous?
Well, I use most of the time pulse mode. Just during the exercise class when you're really getting the cardio going. I need the continuous, and I need continuous. I gotta figure out when I'm gonna vacuum my house. Like I need continuous for that and that kind of thing. So if I'm running low on oxygen, I'm like, well, I'm gonna have to wait till I get delivered before I vacuum again, because it's
Can they not give you a concentrator, like a bigger one that you sit like in your hallway or something?
I had a concentrator when I first went on oxygen. I ended up getting influenza A, and I guess because I have COPD, that damaged my lungs further. Where I was in the hospital for like 8 days, and they sent me home with oxygen. And I had the concentrator for about 6 months, but then the respiratory lady came to my house, did the visit, and they said I don't need it while I'm sleeping anymore. So they took the concentrator away. So I'm not allowed to have it now because I don't need it for sleeping.
What happens when there's a power outage?
Well, my bottles are just the regular.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, I don't need power. Mine are just the cylinder bottles.
Yeah, it's a lot of work to maintain those and change the regulators all the time. It's weird that they've limited the amount. So out here too, like if you qualify just for ambulation, they do put a limit. And I know that some people who use it for ambulation within the home have been, I don't know, I'll say the word accused of using it in their home. And it's not in BC, they're not supposed to use it in the home. It's only for outings, and that's why they limit it, or that's why they feel they should limit it. But it's odd that they're restricting the oxygen to less than what people need to live an active lifestyle.
Yeah, because some days it's like, sorry, dog, we can't go for a walk. You're just gonna have to play in the backyard. I'm going around with oxygen. I did that before. This is when I was still working last November. I ran out of oxygen in my small tank, just walking from my truck to my door of my house. I was just gasping, and then a few minutes later, once I got back oxygen on, I started having really bad chest pains and ended up going to the hospital, and they thought I had a heart attack. I guess the stress from not having enough oxygen. Right. And that made my breathing even worse. But I ended up not having a heart attack, but my nephron blood level was higher than normal, so they thought I might have done some kind of heart damage, but they couldn't see what I'd done. But it made my breathing a little worse since that episode as well, from running out of oxygen.
Did you have hypoxia?
Did I have which?
Hypoxia, low blood oxygen?
I don't know.
When's the last time your oxygen levels?
I had an episode of that last year, and so I was hospitalized for that. I had that with pneumonia.
Oh.
How often do they? Oh, sorry.
That's not exactly related to traveling with oxygen directly, but that thought just came up a moment ago.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so hopefully they're testing you Yeah, it's definitely stressful. And hopefully they are following up and testing your oxygen needs, because it sounds like they may have changed.
I just had another lung test 2 weeks ago, breathing test, because I'm
Oh, don't you just love those?
and the
Function
numbers
test.
have gone down since 6 months ago, since before my hospitalization. So my blowing out numbers have gone down, whatever that means. Gotten worse.
What area do you live in? You said Surrey?
Yeah.
You can always call the community respiratory services and ask for another assessment, because sometimes
They were here last week.
Oh, last week. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Great.
Occasionally,
Great.
they'll allow a concentrator for like activities of daily life or daily living, they say, if you desaturate really quickly, just walking. But if it takes you a little while to desaturate, they unfortunately won't qualify you for that big concentrator.
Yeah, they don't qualify.
You need it like at rest, like all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and or like you said, while you're sleeping.
Yeah, so I don't need it then.
Yeah. And the other thing is sometimes we can ask for an extra delivery if we kind of escalate that, because is it every 2 weeks that they deliver?
Yeah. The lady that was here last week, she asked for me to see if I can get an extra couple bottles or something, but they said no. Okay.
Frustrating. We can keep asking. I think on some occasions they might be able to do like every week instead of every 2 weeks.
What they did tell me though is I can go to their warehouse myself and exchange some empty bottles for some new ones. Yeah. So that's an option. I can do that. I just learned that last week. Mm-hmm.
That's a matter of the delivery, getting someone to come out to you. They don't want to do it every week.
Well, I mean, they deliver every 2 weeks, but if I'm getting low, I can go there myself and exchange.
Yeah.
In between deliveries.
That option.
Is it far?
Hmm?
Is it far for you?
I'm not sure. You know, like I phoned Vital Air last week and they're always hard to get a hold of. I said, our lines are really busy. If you leave your phone number, we'll get back to you. And I'm still waiting. So I don't know if anyone else has problems getting through to Vital Air, but I've waited since it's been probably 3 or 4 days for Vital Air to call me back. So I'm going to have to try it again because I don't know where their office is.
Their depot is in Langley, just off of 200th Street, just north of the freeway.
Oh.
So I don't know where you live, but
I'm in White Rock, so that's probably a good 40 minutes. My son used to live over by Highway 1 on 200.
Yeah.
It's a good 40-minute drive without rush hour. Mm-hmm. Each way. Yeah.
When you're traveling, be sure to bring some extra cannulas with you.
Extra what?
Nasal cannulas.
Don't know what those are.
What you put into your nose.
Oh, okay.
That's connected to the tubing.
That's a good idea because it's been a few times I've gotten out of my vehicle and closed the door, closed the tubing inside the door, and I'm like, oh, I probably broke it, but it survived. But it's a good idea to have an extra.
Yeah, I prefer the Salter 1600Q. It has a curved tip that works better for me than the straight tip. And it's also more flexible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vital Air, they supply them, and they're the curved ones, I guess. They're quite comfortable. Yeah.
How often are you supposed to change them? I forgot.
I change them every 2 weeks about every month, I guess. But if I have an infection, I change them more frequently. My supplier, like my driver, asks me every time he comes if I need more supplies, and I actually have a great stock here. I don't really need, any for a while, but yeah, they're pretty generous
soap and water as well.
Yeah, once a month is what they recommend, especially because it get kind of like the oils on your face and stuff. It can kind of get hardened, and so if it's like obviously visibly dirty or damaged, change it. But at least once.
I haven't been doing it, but I know that it's I should be.
The 50-foot hosing, I probably only change every second or third month. I don't use that. Well, I use that, I guess, every day, but I could just change the cannula part. I don't need to change the hose.
Yeah.
Yeah, against the facial oils kind of
right.
Makes it a little
and
bit
also
hard.
The tips that are in your nose gets hardened over a period of time. Sometimes I don't notice it until I switch to a new one. Then I think like, oh, this is so comfortable.
I can breathe again.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
I wanted to say that with the Pulmonary Hypertension Association, I've been a panelist with several of their conferences and have given my contributions on traveling with oxygen. So I'll locate those links and I'll send them along, and you can have a look at them, or you can leave them, up on the pulmonary, your own, like our page here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeannie. That's great. And thank you, everyone, for sharing your experiences and asking your questions. Really good discussion into figuring out how we navigate all of this traveling with oxygen. I really liked what Barb said, that it's definitely doable, just involves some planning. And thank you to Laura for sharing your expertise on some of the finer details. So as we've mentioned, Laura has put together a home oxygen and traveling with oxygen page in our Poplar community. So do keep your eyes posted for that when we get that up. We just want to add some really good pictures for you all, and then we'll get that up right away. As well, Laura, as she mentioned, she's a health coach with a respiratory therapy background, and she has clinic hours in our Poplar clinic. So if you need to connect with a respiratory therapist for a more personalized plan, or to ask your questions, you can book with Laura in the Poplar clinic, which you can find on our website, as well as in the Poplar community on the bottom of the navigation bar. You'll see a link there for the Poplar clinic. We thank you again. We also are curious what other topics you'd like to hear about. So maybe before you log off, I'll stop the recording, and you're welcome to share in the chat box or with Tina and myself at any point we interact, some of the topics that you'd really like to delve into and have questions about. So we thank you once again.